Hey y'all, it's Cara from Shaka Gurus, and today we're on part 3 of our WordPress Essentials playlist, and we're going to go over the difference between sections and columns and Flexbox containers and grids. Okay, so if you have an older website, or shall I say a website that's running an older version of Elementor, you more than likely have what are called sections that build out your pages. If you have a newer version, you'll see containers that build out your pages. And then in some cases, you'll have a mix of both containers and sections. Now, what if you actually don't know? You're saying, hey, I don't see anything about containers, and I want to be able to find my container settings if they're not enabled. So the best way to do that is you want to go to your WordPress dashboard, click on the E at the top left, exit to WordPress if you're in the editor. From the dashboard, you want to go to Elementor, Editor, Settings. When that page loads, you want to go to the Features tab. On the Features tab, scroll down and you want to look for Container under Stable Features. If Container is default or inactive, then you're not using containers. If you want to use containers, you need to activate this setting, make sure it's green, and then scroll to the very bottom and select Save Changes. And once you save changes, that will allow your site to start using containers. Let's get into it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into an older version of Elementor. So this site here, this has more of your section approach. Now, the key thing here is when you go to sections, if you look at your structure, you'll notice that you may see something called an intersection, and you'll see columns within an intersection. Now, some of the limitations here are columns can only kind of go top to bottom with content. So I'm going to show you quickly what that means. So if we have our first column here and I wanted to add an element, let's say I want to add an icon, and let's just add a heading beneath the icon. So I have let me redo this because it actually didn't add it into the column here. So let me click specifically on the column and add the heading. So now we have the icon and the heading here. The limitation here is with columns, it can only go top to bottom. I can't put the icon on the left if I wanted to. I can't switch the order if I wanted to. And so it kind of limits me. As far as a nesting approach goes, I really can't nest the information within this intersection any farther than this first layer. What I can do is I can duplicate this column. Right click and duplicate it, and I can make it look the same, but I can't continue to break it down farther. Again, I can't change the direction if I wanted to, and you'll see in a moment how Flexboxes gives us a bit more flexibility with that. So I just wanted to quickly show you what columns look like within sections, so you have a quick understanding of what the older version of Elementor looks like. And the key thing is, if you click on the structure icon up here next to the eye, if you see columns, if you see intersections, then you'll know that you're dealing with an older version of Elementor that's building most of the site with sections. So now let's hop over into the container approach, because that's really what I want to get into today. I want to make sure we understand containers, Flexboxes, and grids. So we're on our site here, and I'm just going to go to add a new section here. Now, what you're going to see, you have Flexbox and grid. We're going to go through Flexbox first. And as you can see here, we have different layouts we can choose from. I'm just going to go with the straightforward. I'm going to do the first one. I'm going to do the first option here. So with this Flexbox, initially, I'm going to add a couple of elements. Let me add over here. I'm going to add maps. Let's just add a Google Maps in here. And then I'm going to also add, let's see, what else do I want to add? Let me just add a heading here while that's loading. A heading, and maybe let's add a button. Okay. All right. So with Flexboxes, here are some of the key things here. When I select my Flexbox, my layout options, I have more options than I do when I have a traditional column within a section. So the direction is a key difference here. The direction is what allows you to flex the direction that you want the items to go. So right now we have a column that's vertical. However, if I wanted the column to shift into a row, I could do that here and just select the row and all the elements will move into a row. Or if I wanted to reverse the order, I could reverse the order, and I can also reverse from a column direction. And the unique part about this is I can do this without having to add new elements, without having to add more code on the back end. And I can change this at every breakpoint, which means if I want the direction to go left to right in a row on desktop, but I want it to go right to left on a tablet, I can change that at each breakpoint between tablet and mobile without having to add more elements to the site and making it a bit more complex to make that happen. So I really like this feature a lot with the Flexbox approach, because you can go top to bottom. And then when it comes to keeping things aligned, you have these align items, and you can, like for me, if I had this approach, I'd ideally want to align them and make them centered. And the other thing here is for the gaps, you can also immediately determine how much space you want between the columns and the rows. So if I wanted to say I wanted it to be like 50, oh, I said 500. If I wanted it to be like 50 between each element, I can change that here. Or if I wanted it to be 25, or if I wanted it to be 10, I could do that. Or I can lock the value and give them both the column and row the same approach. So I really like that about Flexboxes. Now, I also want to show you grids briefly. So with grids, I'm going to add another container, and we're going to go to the plus symbol here. And this time we're going to select grid. Now, grid is pretty much literal. It's a grid. You can choose the structure that you want of your grid, and you would usually use the grid if you have a layout that will be duplicating itself. If you have a set of images, if you have a set of text with a button and you want it to be more aligned and structured, the grid would be your best approach. So I'm going to select this grid layout that's like a 3x3. And what you're going to see here is we have these boxes that immediately pop up. So we have the 3x3 boxes. Now, what I really like about the grid with Elementor, we can change that format in this grid outline section for the items. So if you only want a 2x2, you can just change it to a 2x2. If you want it a 4x3, 4x4, like you can automatically change it how you see fit. So what I'm going to show you is, if you wanted to replicate items, let me just make this a little bit smaller. If you wanted to replicate items, I'm going to show you how to do that using grids. So what I like to do is I like to start by adding a container into the first grid. And you're going to see why I like to add the container, because it's going to go back to that Flexbox approach that makes things a little bit easier. So I'm going to add a container, and I'm going to go with, first I'm going to add an icon in here. And then this is like a really common layout approach. After the icon, I'm going to add a heading. And then after the heading, I'm going to just add like simple text. This is a very common approach. Let me make this text just a little bit smaller. Yeah. Okay. So what we have here with the grid, similar to what I was saying with the Flexbox, you can change the direction that you want within this first grid. So if you want things to go left to right, you can. If you want it to reverse the order, you could reverse it. You can change the column order and so forth. Now, traditionally, this is how it would look. But if I know that I'm going to have this same context or same layout repetitively, all I have to do is right click on the container, duplicate, and it automatically goes to the next grid. And then it automatically goes to the next grid if I duplicate it again. Then when I get here, because it's a grid, it's just going to flow into the next row. So I really like this approach because it helps keep things orderly. I can also, as I mentioned with the Flexbox, if you select the whole grid, you can also change the spacing between each grid item. So if I wanted my columns here to be 35, you see how it jumped 35, and because this locked, the column and the row changes at 35. So it really keeps everything orderly. It keeps everything even. Let me just show you, like if I changed it to 50, you see how it automatically changes for you. So by default, it sets it at 20, but you can change that how you see fit. And if you needed the row to be larger, you could unlink it, and then you can make your row, if you want it, the row could be 50. And then the columns could be 20, and you see a larger gap here. So you just get way more flexibility with this approach. Also with the grid, you can change it at every breakpoint. I'll show you briefly. We haven't talked about mobile optimization yet, but I'll show you briefly. I just went to the tablet breakpoint up here. And if I selected the grid, but for tablet, if I didn't want things to seem so squished, over here, I could actually change the frames to 2 instead of 3. Or if I wanted them to be 1 on the tablet, I could do that. Oops, I went back up to 3. I could go to 1. So I really like this because really from a performance perspective, it is consolidating the elements so your page will load faster. Whereas if I were trying to do this with sections and columns, I'd have to keep adding column elements, which would not necessarily like dramatically slow down the performance, but the Flexbox and the grid option gives us more flexibility in the literally, and it gives you more options and streamlines how you can be a bit more unique with your layout approach. So with that being said, I just want to give you a couple of takeaways here so that you will understand like the high points of sections and columns versus Flexboxes, containers, and grids. If you realize that you were on an older version and you wanted to convert your section to a container, you can do that without having to rebuild your site. So what you do is you select your section, and then on the far left under layout, you would select convert. When you select convert, it's going to duplicate your section but change it into a container. So now you're going to see here, now I have a container. When I come down here, this is my container. So it kept my same elements, moved it into a container, and now I can see everything is broken down into a container versus being broken down into columns. And one of the key things here is you can continue to nest these items within a container, where a column only lets you nest things only once. So if you wanted to, you could continue to add containers within here, and you could change the directions of certain elements and so forth. That if you wanted to, you can just convert a section to a container without starting a new site. I would recommend using containers moving forward for all your new work. And again, if you want to recognize, hey, does my site even use sections or containers? The biggest identifier is you'll see intersections over here in your structure. And when you are looking in your layout pane, it'll say convert to container. That's it for today, y'all. I hope you learned a lot between sections and columns versus Flexboxes, grids, and containers. Stay tuned for part 4 of our WordPress Essentials playlist, where I'm going to show you how to add a blog to your website. If this video solved a problem for you, hit the like button. To solve the next one, hit subscribe. Let's keep building.